Greetings and welcome to the VVA podcast. My name is Leila Resme.
And I'm Cristina Tumino.
And today we have a very special guest, Alison Armstrong, who is a thought leader, speaker, and author whose journey has begun in 1991 when she decided to study men. She wondered why she was bringing out the worst in them and wondered if she can bring out the best instead. This led her to studying women's behaviour, making vital connections between the two. Over decades, her work evolved into the study of human behavior with the goal to create more fulfilling and happy relationships.
Yes,
Alison,
welcome.
it's so lovely to see you here.
Yes, welcome very much for joining us.
Yeah.
It's a big pleasure to have you here. So I know that you, as we were saying, you work a lot with relationships and how to make this connection between men and women and make it as well a bit more like magical in some way. But why do you think relationships are so important and yet so hard?
Good question. Okay. So I'm gonna start like really fundamental. Okay. And what I mean by that is fundamental on the individual level, that we literally have two sets of nervous systems, right? We have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And one is incredibly primitive. And so why are relationships so important in that nervous system? Because we are herd animals and pack animals. So herd being prey, pack being predator. We're both predator and prey, but we survive as a group. We survive as a unit. So that connection with other members of our herd or our pack, our status in that pack, how much respect we have, what the sense of connection is, how connected we feel, like we're so connected, you're not going to kick me out. That drives so much of our behavior, which is part of what makes relationships so hard, because they're driven by instinct. And then we also have, the prefrontal cortex, we have the crown chakra, if you will. We have this sense of self as something much bigger than our instincts, what we generally refer to as human spirit. And so in that whole domain, there's a profound sense of connection, of oneness, of being for each other, that we are on the same team and partnering. And it's not hierarchical, right? It's not competitive. It's incredibly supportive and nurturing. And so we have that whole part of ourselves to express. But when we're threatened, when we perceive a threat, the instincts kick in. And between men and women, we share a whole bunch of needs that we both have. But we generally, our instincts have us express them in opposite ways. And those opposite ways make us clash. So, for example, just what testosterone does to the brain creates compartmentalization and single focus. And so for most men, as soon as they pick something, a destination or a result to produce, their brains screen out everything irrelevant. And if they have what they need to pursue that goal or destination, then they have a sense of peace, a sense of safety, a sense of movement and progress and productivity, which we all need. And they're good. They're in good shape, and you'll get all kinds of great qualities from them. most women are pulled between that committed state of mind and what estrogen does to our brain, which estrogen creates the opposite of compartmentalization. There are no compartments. There's diffuse awareness, which is what allows us to track so many things and causes us to perceive so many things in our environment, like the mental and physical and emotional state of everybody in our house. we can't not notice, right? We can't not notice how we're doing. And depending on where we're at in the spectrum of the part of our brain called care intend, right? As women get older, the care intend part of our brain naturally shuts down unless it's reactivated by the smell of babies, literally by the smell of babies. Like inhale them. So we'll still observe how people are around us, and we may be irritated by it because they're grumpy or something, or they're sick and they need something. But before we're compelled to take care of them, now we're just irritated by they need to be taken care of and I don't want to. And but when we're in that open state of mind, how we feel safe is by feeling profoundly connected. Mm-hmm. So we're always, it's as if we're on constant redial, right? Like, are we connected? Are we connected now? Can you hear me now? How are we now? We good? We good? We good? I love you. Goodbye. I'll talk to you tomorrow. You have a nice day. Like, it takes forever to rip the Velcro apart, right? And so here you have one creature who feels safe through connection and another creature who feels safe through the peace of their own isolated state of mind. And so one is interrupting the other's peace in order to try to get their own peace. Can you see it?
Ouch.
So
Yes.
it's like the opposite in some way.
Oh, we literally have opposite impulses, and that's what makes relationships so hard, because we're both compelled to have them, often for different reasons, but still intense compulsion. The compulsion for men, oh my gosh, I get to talk to them about it in a lot of different ways. They're part of our Smart Singles program, and they are intensely looking for a partner, just as women are intensely looking for a partner, but what they're looking for in a partner is completely different, and the opposite sex doesn't know it. That's not the short answer to why are they so important and so hard, but that I think will give you some meat.
I can imagine there's probably no short answer to this. So it was a bit of a tricky question.
Honestly, Layla, when I started, I didn't think of it as studying men, right? I wanted to know, I actually didn't even know why I didn't want to know why I was bringing out the worst in them. I wanted to know how I was bringing out the worst in them.
Right.
And in discovering the how, then I discovered the why.
Right.
Right. And the why we bring out the worst in them is because of how much of our behavior is driven by fear and frustration and an inability to get what we need from them. And then that has us want to punish them, limit them, withhold from them, because we think they're withholding from us.
Yeah.
Right. So when I first decided, okay, I got to look into this, honestly thought, I'm not kidding. I thought it would take 2 or 3 months to learn everything that was worth knowing about men, because obviously they're shallow. Obviously they have no feelings. Obviously we just got to figure out how this mechanical thing works so we know where to put the key and can get where we want to go. My disdain for men was revealed to me as I studied them and found out how priceless and precious they are. and then oh my gosh, how I've treated them, just profound regret and sadness and shame, and needing to forgive myself that I didn't know any better than any other woman. But I mean, it was 1991 and I didn't intend to study men for 3 decades.
It just kind of happened.
I just was fascinated. I was led from one thing to another, to another, to another. And that's why, you can binge watch on YouTube or on Audible, which only has what I published up till 2012. It doesn't have anything I've done in the last decade. Yeah, I know. Lately, there's so much more on our website that's more recent, including our understanding of women. What's on Audible just presents women as gatherers, but most women these days are hunting like crazy. So I had to update the whole program.
Is there still something else that you kind of like learn? Like, is there something that you not every day, but still something that surprised you that you didn't kind of know about men? Is there something still, or is it more about you?
Oh God.
Is it more about men, or is it more about you that you discover about you and then discover about men? Like, how does it work? Or is it like?
Well, it's a great question. I love the question, Christina. So yes, maybe not every day, but easily every 10 days. There's something, or there's some other aspect, right? That's like, oh my gosh, we missed that. And so it keeps reflecting back. It's like when you have a whole bunch of mirrors lined up. Mm-hmm. So I started with the question, what if men are responding to women? Because I didn't like how they responded to me. Mm-hmm. And so then as I learned what they were responding to, how I learned that is when they did something that surprised me, which was a lot of the time, I try to figure out why they did it. And I was lucky to have 3 men in my life that I could go to them and for verification, which is one of the most important things. If you get nothing else out of this hour, verify. When you think you know why any human being did something, propose. I've been trying to figure out why you did that because I'm sure you had a good reason. Can I tell you what I thought? And then you could clarify or verify it or just straighten me out if I'm completely lopsided. And in the beginning, I projected onto men my reasons for doing things. So when I would ask them if they did it for that reason, honestly, they were horrified. Yeah. One of the men said, I would never do anything for that reason, and no self-respecting man would. Mm. And in case you're wondering what I asked him if he did what his mother wanted him to do. It's a grown-ass man, right? I asked him if he did what his mother had asked him to do, which he did not want to spend his weekend that way. Did he do it because he didn't want to upset her? And that's what he was horrified by. Like, to a man, to be motivated by not upsetting somebody else is dishonorable. Mm. That's dishonorable. But women try to get men to do things by making sure they know how upset they'll be if they don't, or how upset they are that they do those things. They try to get them to stop by making sure they know how upsetting it is. And they think the lack of motivation on their part means that man doesn't really care about them or love them. He does. And now he's in a pickle between his own self-respect and what it is that she says she needs, that is suspect to him, because she says she needs a lot of things, but then her actions are incongruent with what she says she needs. Like, she says she's tired, and she doesn't go to bed. That's mystifying to men because they don't know how distracted we are by our environment, and that our minds don't shut up and let us go to sleep until we fixed all those things. Oh man, Christina, that's what I mean by the mirrors. It's just one reflected back to another, back to another, back to another, back to another, until it's just, always in this inquiry, especially since my circumstances are so different now, of having to, it's perfect, Layla, how you set this up. That recently you had, right, your last segment was about love, and before that is about self-knowledge. Yeah. Love, self-knowledge, and love, and self-knowledge, and so I've had to get clearer about what do I really need, what am I really committed to, that I will act upon regardless, that I'm congruent with, before asking another human being. Like, I got to commit to what works for me before I ask somebody else to commit to what works for me. Because if I'm congruent to them, it's just, why should I bother?
Although it's quite
really
hard.
Where do you think is the kind of line between doing you and living to your kind of, all your values and what you believe, and living your life for yourself, and compromising in a relationship? Because many people say, relationship is about compromise. Some people say, I don't want to compromise, I want to live my life. So where is the line? What do we do about that?
Although I think it can be sometimes quite hard as well to really know yourself, though. But yeah, what would be the line?
Oh my gosh. Okay, two huge questions you're asking. I'm grinning about compromise because that word changed my life. And because I believed, as you just said, relationship requires compromise. And when we were able to have live workshops all the time, right? So for ages, quarter century, we had panels of men in our workshops. And in our understanding workshop, we just had them come and stay the whole weekend. Forget come in for an hour. We need to interact about this. And it's fun because on our website, the Understanding Women online course, you get to see the shock in the men as they're learning about how women are. They're just like looking around, because I asked the women to raise your hand if that's true for you. And it's awesome. It's just awesome. We're such a mystery to them. And the more I illuminate the mystery, then the more fascinated they are. And it's awesome. But anyhow, so in one of the panels, which was about marriage, I asked, what did you have to compromise to be married? And the man who chose that question to answer, he was adamant. And he said, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, and he's in the front with all the participants, and he said, I don't believe in compromise. And I thought, he's not going to be married for long, right? and then he said, I want my wife and I to duke it out until we find something better. And what? And so another clue, if you want to understand men, is go to the dictionary. Go to like Webster's. That is that's the word mystery solver, because it was written by men. So I looked compromise up in the dictionary, and it said something that it rocked my world. It said a negotiation in which both parties give up something important. And when I saw the word important, oh my gosh, because by that point, I knew that important is right next to require, right? It's like men, about 20% of men, you can only say you need something if you'll die without it. So there's what you can need because you'll die without it. And then there's what you need or require in order to fulfill your life, in order to honor yourself, in order to be self-respectful, in order to produce what you're committed to. And all those things are important. So give up something important. A man never wants to give up anything important. And when he cares about you, he doesn't want you to give up something important either.
But we
He doesn't want you to.
I think we shouldn't in reality, like even women, we shouldn't, because if that's the way that who we are, if we give that, in reality, we're not us anymore. So I don't think
Exactly.
Give that.
Oh, wait, Christina, you say that like that's such a simple statement. The whole world is in that statement. If we give up something important, then we're not really who we are anymore. We're not ourselves. Yes, absolutely. Because the things that are important to us are the things that give us, like, fill up the essence of ourselves, right? Our challenge as human beings with those two nervous systems is that we have these spiritual values. They're beautiful, but we live, right? We live in this world in a physical paradigm with a physical piece, if you will. Our avatar, right, is physical. And so if we don't get the spiritual values in this physical body, where instincts are already installed, right? If you don't have your highest values in your body where you can feel them, when you're under stress, you only have instincts. You won't ever be you under stress. You'll be the animal version of you. So when we give up something important, when we give up what feeds us,
Part of us.
we're not us. Thank you. Thank you for saying it so simply, but please don't just keep going after that moment because both men and women, men are better at getting what they need to be themselves, but they still sacrifice themselves all the time to provide for the people they care about, all the time. And so to where you started, Layla, in your question, how, in all those mirrors reflecting, how do we do this? How do we do what we need to preserve our respect, right? And create the partnership is really the word for what we most crave. Partners means on the same team. We crave that, right? While interacting with people as if they're adversarials, as if they're against us, and feeling ourselves like we have to protect ourselves from other people. And if we don't protect ourselves from other people, then we end up sacrificing ourselves, right? Something important. So the question or the statement or the come from that we articulated in about 2009 is that in partnership, the approach is I will if I can without sacrificing myself. And I know you're my partner, that we're on the same team, by approaching you that you will if you can without sacrificing yourself. And so asking you, excuse me, oh boy, I'm gonna have to take a drink. Instead of asking for something we need from, I'm afraid you won't do this, I think you won't do this, you probably won't do this, and so I'm gonna need to get you to do this by letting you know how upset I am, or being really forceful, or having a lot of pressure. If I come to you, wow, what a tickle. If I come to you from, I know you care about me, and so you probably will do what I need if you can without sacrificing yourself. And I want to make sure you don't sacrifice yourself because I care about you. And so there's this this flip that happens where when the other person knows you don't want them to sacrifice what's important, that in fact you're protecting what's important to them, which you should verify that that's important because we project a lot of stuff onto people. But if they know you'll protect what's important to them, then they get to be in the conversation, not defending themselves. And can I give you an example?
Yes, of course.
So my boyfriend, Dan, from the very beginning, I listen. It's a way of listening with the question, what matters to them? What do they care about? What's important to them? We call it listening to learn, instead of how people normally listen, like, what do I think about that? What do I think about that? Or do I agree? Do I agree? Do I agree? Right? Do I think that's good? Is that a good thing? Right? So mostly we're listening to ourselves instead of listening to them. And so from listening to him, I knew from the very beginning, his children are his highest priority. Mm-hmm. And I loved that. I love that about who he is as a human being. And I didn't worry about that would mean I would never be his highest priority, because I don't want to be a man's highest priority. If I'm his highest priority, he's suffocating, because they are so capable and they need so much to do. If you're their highest priority, you have to manage them. You have to keep giving them something to do. It's exhausting. Yeah. And so as we came into the fall, right? So which was after a year of being together, he was trying to set me up to not be disappointed that this year is all about his son, that it's his senior year in high school, and he's going to be off and running, as he knew happened with his daughters. And it's all about his son, and he's gonna do everything he can. He's willing to miss a couple of hockey games, but he's gonna do everything he can to beat his son's hockey games. Well, I don't know if you know anything about hockey, but when you're passionate about hockey is year round. Hockey's not a winter sport. And I could tell he was nervous, and he had this edge, and he had this, how he's interacting with me was that what he was used to from other women, that they were going to keep being upset that he kept choosing to be at a hockey game instead of being with them. And I could hear it, I could feel it, I could see where it was coming from. I knew it wasn't about me. And I just got to say, I just need you to stop for a moment and tell you something. And I got to express to him how much he never has to defend from me, never has to defend from me what he provides for his children. And God bless him, he got it. He believed me, and he could believe me because he could see that up until that moment, I'd been congruent with that even before he told me. Mm-hmm. Right? And so now it's just fun. Now it's just, how can you come? So this is what I mean by we've got to verify what's important, because we call it the center of the universe. And one of the things that makes our relationship so hard, and women tend to do it more than men, men absolutely do it. We'll project onto the other person, or we'll judge the other person by, is what's important to me important to them? And what's important to me should be important to them. And are they an obstacle to what's important to me? Mm-hmm. Right? And we don't verify. It seems like this is what's important to you. And there's a course on our website called Own Your Ultimatums. Mm-hmm. And I created it in this journey of interacting with Dan about what it would take to be in relationship with me. Because after my husband passed, I didn't think I ever wanted to do that again. And then I knew I couldn't not do that again, right? But I wasn't willing to do it under any circumstances. I have 42 ultimatums. And he, when I was talking about one of them, he goes, that sounds like an ultimatum. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Because I'd never called them that before. I'd always called them deal breakers. And like you can learn about in sync with opposite sex. And I sat down with him and said, can we have a grown-up conversation about ultimatums? Because you have them too. And he looked at me because he doesn't think of himself that way. And I started naming, if I wanted to be a higher priority than your children, would we still be together? No. If I wouldn't participate in all the activities you like to do, would we still be together? He looked at me like that was unthinkable. Why wouldn't you? Right? And I just kept naming all these things that I knew were important to him. And I was right. Would we still be together? Oh no. Would we still be together? Oh no. But he didn't know he had ultimatums, right? Because he just was consistently making the decision that the words that men use about being with someone or not being with someone is, they just think in terms of, is it worth it? Is being with her worth it? And the cost of being with that person they're present to, no, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it because of how many things that are important they'd have to give up or are giving up or can see they just tipped over the edge of giving up more than they're willing to give up. And I'll tell you, for both men and women, the more attracted we are, especially how much chemistry we have, the more we will sell our souls to be with that person. Which is why I say, when you're really attracted to someone that way, run in the opposite direction. Okay, thank you for letting me just talk and talk and talk. I'm going to stop now, please.
No, I was thinking. I've been with my husband for 23 years, so long time. And I was quite young when I met him. And for me, it was actually like love at first sight. Like I saw him and I said, oh, who's this man? Like it was me, like them. And it's true. I think the first good years, although I decided to go and live on my own at the beginning, I said, I want to do this experience. I'm quite young. I don't want you to come and live with me. I'm doing this experience and then we'll see. Okay, so I went to live on my own for a few years first. And then at the end, and then we got married. But for a very long time, I could do anything. Like I didn't really know myself. And for me, everything was about him. And then all of a sudden, I started to realize, like, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy. And then started to think that it was his fault, but in reality, it wasn't his fault. It was me that I didn't even know, like, how I was, I really didn't know myself. That was the point. And I was, as you were saying, having kind of conceptions of him, thinking that he was doing this and then we started to go like through things and talk about stuff. And now we got to a point, I mean, that things, of course, they go like, you know, like in a long relationship, they can go up and down. But now we got to the conclusion that we stay together every day because we choose to stay together that day. And because I do what I love and I work on myself. And I realized that by doing things that I like about me and saying what I like is what he actually does the same. Like, it's like kind of, we learn from each other, but the more I do what I like, the more he starts to do it as well in his own way for him. And I think like, wow, and that's what you were saying about, it's like a partnership. It's like walking together, like hand by hand, rather than me being kind of giving up or something, or you giving up. And I mean, we learn every day. It's not like I think it will be until the last day, and we don't know like if we will still always be together. But I think that's the beauty of learning, that it's not like, we actually said this, did we read, Leila, in one of the things, that it's not like having the other half, but you need to be your whole. Like you don't need the other half. It's your whole.
We are a whole already. It's just that we find someone to join us on the journey rather than find the other half, because that's just sounds wrong in a way, you know. It's like you're saying I'm not whole, and I think this is important. But we wanted to ask you as well, because we've kind of spoken about the things about men that women don't know. What do you think are the kind of main things that men don't know about women, that if they knew, it would kind of blow their minds, basically, and actually help them in understanding us? Because I don't think we're aware how little they know, and men don't know how little we know about them either. So what would you say are kind of key juicy points?
Yeah, we figure the other person knows the right thing to do and is purposely not doing it.
Yeah.
That they don't know at all. So the first thing is so important. I actually have right on the front of our website is a sample of our Understanding Women course, which also helps people to understand men. And it's a 30-minute excerpt from the beginning of that course, because it is the biggest thing that men don't know about women, and that shapes all of our instinctual behavior. And so I won't try to recreate 30 minutes. I just go do it. It's free to watch, right? Is men don't know how women are part of our consciousness is always monitoring our safety. And they don't know that. They don't know how much of our consciousness is always monitoring our safety. And they don't know how many things occur as scary. They don't know how many things are threatening to us. They don't know how much actually the worry center of the brain, the amygdala, is bigger and twice as active in women as in men. And so they don't know, for example, that when they raise their voice, that's scary. They don't know that. To them, yelling or a man raising his voice, it's nothing. It really is nothing. They don't know how rattled our nervous system is by that. And even if like what they're doing is yelling at the computer that doesn't work, right? Or they're yelling at another driver, right? And we're upset, and they don't understand why we're upset that they're doing that. Well, I'm not yelling at you. And so, and that's just one thing. They don't know how much we rely on them to make us feel safe. And I caution, you can only help a woman feel safe. Some women, you can't ever do enough to have them feel safe, because they're not conscious enough to catch their own instincts, which will perceive a threat everywhere. And so that whole domain of safety and helping women to feel safe is, men they don't know it, they don't get it. And when we teach them about it, I have to caution them. You can't make her feel safe. Do not sacrifice yourself to try to make her feel safe. You can help her. This is how to help her. The other thing that they don't know is, yes, there are women, and there's an aspect of strangeness that borders on fear that can cause sexual excitement. And some like to ride that edge. But mostly what has women open and available and want to be intimate is what they would call romance, that he's romantic. And that's what has them want to be naked. He's romantic. And they don't know, because I haven't done what I did, ask women, what do men do that's romantic? And what do men do that make you feel safe? Well, when we're walking across the street and my boyfriend puts his hand in the middle of my back, or my low back as we're walking across the street or stepping over something, right? Or, if I'm with a man friend, he might like take my elbow to steer me somewhere so I don't step in a puddle, right? Like, they just, yeah, all these things that make her feel safe, make herself listening to me. He listens to me. He asks me how was my day, and he really listens. Totally makes us feel safe. Totally makes us want to take our clothes off or have him rip them off. They don't know that. They don't know. Oh my gosh, the list of what they don't know. There's 11 hours of videos in Understanding Women. There's 15 hours of videos in Understanding Men. But seriously, this reflection back and forth in what we don't know, and we are projecting, and we don't know about ourselves, we don't know about the others. We have over 100 hours of videos on our website. And then there's hundreds more. Like you said, you can binge watch on YouTube. The way that my brain works, which I take no credit for, it's my father's brain, my grandfather's brain. I learn from everything. And I learn like all the learning languages, I learn all those ways. And so that's why, maybe not every day, Christina, but at least every 10 days, but it's probably more. There's something else or some nuance. And for example, men don't know that criticism, women have no protection against criticism most of the time, and how much protection they have depends on their menstrual cycle. They don't know that. That literally our hormone levels determine how much shielding we have from criticism. And and so they don't know. That's why they always say to us when we're upset about being criticized, right? How many times have you heard a man say, well, honey, consider the source, right? Because that's their first layer of protection. It's actually their second layer of protection. Their first layer is single focus. They're so focused, they may never even hear the criticism because they're focused on something else. They don't hear it going, oh God, not again. They didn't hear it. They're just getting it done. Yeah, but if they do hear it, their next level of protection is consider the source. And if they don't respect the source, and men laugh, you'll see in Understanding Women, men laugh when I teach this. If they don't respect this source, then it was no more than a fart. It's just like kind of but it'll dissipate,
It actually makes sense, doesn't it? Where we take everything so personally sometimes, where it just colors our whole experience of reality, right? And I think this is why women think men are so evil almost, because they say things that between themselves it would mean nothing, whereas when a woman hears it from a man, it can destroy her. But actually, when we come to understand that men just work in such a different way, we see that they're actually amazing creatures, right? They're not bad, they're not evil at all. And
Yes.
Amazing.
And we can learn as
And
well.
the more that he cares about you, the more he respects you, the more he cares about you, your criticism can crush him.
Mm-hmm.
It can crush him because consider the source, he respects the source. If he respects the source, then he'll look at the criticism itself and compare it to what he knows to be true about him.
Mm.
And if he knows something else to be different about him, it can crush him that the woman he loves thinks that about him.
Mm.
That she doesn't see him, that she doesn't know him. I mean, literally like crushed. They look like a truck ran over their collarbones and their sternum and their ribs and crushed them. Their whole body goes. And if you see men walking around like this, they have been crushed.
Mm.
And they can be restored. And when you see a man restored, his body shows it. And when you see a man who's actually been empowered, the term uplifted, he literally, his body lifts.
So how can we restore a man? What can women do to restore either their man or whether it's someone in the family? What restores a man?
Well, in the Queen's Code book, right, which will be out on audio next year, and in the Understanding Men online course, we talk about the ways that women emasculate men. And so how are we diminishing them? How are we causing them to be less? And because they let us, by the way, they let us impact them that way. So we teach men about it too, so that they stop letting us. And then there's the opposite of it. But one of the ways to restore a man is actually to sincerely apologize for having diminished him, for having criticized him, for having said something snarky. And they so appreciate it. And can I give you an example? This happened just yesterday. I asked Dan a question about a woman who just texted him, I'm going to call you in a few minutes, about seeing their mutual friend he's in hospice care now. He's dying. And I had not heard this woman's name before. And I wasn't jealous or anything. I was just like, wait, I thought I understood who was important to him and important to his friend. And who is this person? And so we're eating breakfast. I just made it for him, which was a surprise, right? Because we live near each other, but not together. I will not live with him, but really near each other. There's 90 of my steps between my door and his. And so I'm like, who is Gretchen? Why is this Gretchen person so important to seeing Pete? And Dan did what he always does, which is he told me Gretchen's full name and her husband's full name and their two children's names and how old they were and what they do for what his husband does for a living, what the wife does for a living, how long he's known the children and how they're related to his children and did he coach them in hockey or not. And seriously, so he's going down this whole path, which I normally love because it makes me feel so included. I've moved to his city and it makes me feel so included in this incredible community he has from 30 years of living here. But he hadn't mentioned Gretchen and Pete yet, right? Like, but why does Gretchen need to see Pete before he dies? Like, there are people who need to see him. Why does she need to see him? And why do you have to go with her, right? And so he's going down his path and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have a lot of tension about, you're about to talk to her and I don't know what she has to do with Pete. And he, like, you could just see him totally thrown, right? Like not himself, right? His self-expression, who he is, was diminished by that.
Mm.
And so he tried to rally, tried to just cut to the chase of what this was all about that might affect our day. and I appreciate that he did that, and I felt terrible because I learned from him, and he started explaining to me in the very beginning. I mean, this man has had maybe up to a dozen of blackout quality concussions from playing hockey. So he has had to train his brain to remember, train it, like, and just with this intensity of being able to process information, like, which is what the brain responds to. Like, he rewired his brain. And so I apologized to him later. I said, I know that for every person there is a file, and you've worked so hard at this, and you have to proceed through the file. You need to do that. And I benefit by it. And I am so sorry I interrupted you. Because of what I was tense about. And his whole countenance changed. Do you know? He's like, thank you for your apology. I accept it. You are forgiven. And then we got to proceed to like how I could get better, right? Like what I could do to let him know when I have tension about something. And that if he could tell me that part before the rest, I'd appreciate it. And if he can't, I'll just wait. And how I can remind myself, never, that in over a year, he's never not answered my question. He's just gone his route to be able to get to the answer. He's never lost track of it. I've never had to wonder, is he ever going to tell me? 100% of the time, he's answered what I asked, but he had to do it his way. And this is one of the biggest things that men don't know about women, that we have to do it our way. When you ask me a question that's important, I have to tell you when in my life I discovered it was important. Where was I when I discovered it was important? Maybe what was I wearing? Who was I with when I discovered it was important? Anything important is emblazoned in the brain with the whole context of it showing up in our life. They don't know that. And they're like, is there a point? Is there a point? Am I ever going to get to a point? Is she ever going to get to a point? Do I have to remember all this? Am I going to be tested? Oh God. And then their eyes glaze over. And we think they don't love us.
Yeah. Well, I'm very conscious of time because I understand, you know.
It's time.
I think that's beautiful as well, because I think we learn as well how to listen and how to be patient, because sometimes we're not very patient and we're not very good at listening. We're more about us talking. So that's, I think, is a beautiful thing maybe to end with. We had other questions, but I understand it's not possible. Maybe another.
Well, you said in the beginning, if there was something I really wanted people to know, you wanted me to say it, and you lived up to that. You were congruent. You let me say it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alison. It's such an honor to have you here. Honestly, you're such a radiant soul, and we have been looking forward to this interview for a long time now. So thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to say where people can find you? I know we said where
we will put the
along
information.
The way.
Yeah, we will put information anyway below. But anything you want to say for people to find you, or I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll take care of that part. I just the last thing I would say, you know, it wraps up what we're talking about. Honor yourself first, or all is lost. And having that clarity about who you are and what you need, and then representing it early and often and being loyal to it. The more we prove to ourselves we're trustworthy, right, to not betray ourselves, the less on guard we have to be. And then the more receptive we are to everyone. And then the more giving people can be to us. And literally that's the difference between one kind of life that's miserable, right, and scarce and stingy and scary, and another kind of life that is magical, right, magical and miraculous and surrounded by generous people. And when you encounter somebody who's not, you just can have compassion for them. Oh, they live in a different reality, darn. But I'm not going to go into their reality with them. Maybe they'll come over here, but I'm not going down that hole.
Yeah.
That's so powerful, Alison. Thank you so much for your wisdom.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so
Privilege.
Okay. Bye.